Hello everyone, this is Etherimp, and welcome to the DayZ Survival Guide, Chapter 1, Settings and Controls. This will be the first in a series of tutorial videos covering all aspects of DayZ, from preparing yourself for success to surviving and thriving as a lone wolf or in a large group. Whether you're a hardened vet from the mod or you've just picked up the game, this series will walk you through the process of surviving, step by step, allowing you to take on anything DayZ can throw at you. Keep in mind that at the time that this video was made, DayZ Standalone is still in alpha, and as such, much of the information contained in this debut video is subject to change as the game is updated. Rest assured that if any major changes take place which make anything in this video wrong or obsolete, I will make an effort to release an updated video amending this chapter. As the title suggests, in this chapter we will go over how to properly configure your graphic settings to maximize your FPS without sacrificing situational awareness, as well as configuring your mouse and keyboard bindings to improve your control over your in-game character as well as your weapon accuracy. So without further ado, let's begin. So here we are at the main menu of DayZ, and what you can do from here is, first thing, you can rotate your character around to look at them from all different angles. The character that appears here is going to be the last character that you were logged in on. So whether you were on experimental or hardcore or regular servers, the last character that you were logged in on will be the character that appears here. The second thing you can do is change your name. A lot of people are not aware of this, especially newer players. They aren't aware how to change their name. I see the question a lot on the forums and stuff. So this is how you do it. You double click here and you can highlight or just move your mouse with the arrows, and you can go in there and add and remove whatever you see fit. A lot of times, I believe that DayZ defaults to your Steam name, and if you don't want to use your Steam name for in-game, or if you want to add a clan tag or whatever, then you would just double-click in here, and it'll bring up the cursor, and you can change it accordingly. Third thing here is play. The play button, and what that'll do is that'll connect you to the last server you were playing on. If you have not played on a server yet, so if this is your first time loading up DayZ, it'll take you to a random server that is not full, not passworded, and that is of decent ping. I believe it's like under 100 or something. Or the best server possible, like the fastest one you can find. A lot of times you're going to just get connected to a zero-pop server, because there are a lot of zero-pop servers out there, so it's likely going to throw you onto one. The next option is character. Now, by default, your character is randomized, meaning every time you die, or every time you join a different hive, or the first time you join the game, you're going to get a random character. So you may be a white male, you may be a black female, you may be an Asian male, you may be a Hispanic female, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's always random. Everything is randomized. So you got male, female. You got light, very dark, which is black. Dark is Hispanic or Latino or Latina. And then medium is Asian. And then there's like 5 or 6 different colored t-shirts, and 5 or 6 different colored shoes and pants. And then once you're done selecting your character, you can just hit set default. And now when you log into any server, or when you die and you respawn, you will always respawn as that same default character. Remember to set default before you hit back, or it'll be always randomized. If you go to change server, in here we have a bunch of options for searching for servers. Let's see, we have our internet, which is all servers that fit within your filter. You can organize by host name, organize by hive, mode, version, time, friends, players, and ping. Usually you're probably going to want to go a combination of players and ping. Obviously hardcore, it distinguishes between hardcore or regular. You got your favorites here, and you can add a favorite by simply clicking add to favorites, and then you can remove a favorite by going to one of your favorites and clicking remove from favorites. Your history will show your favorites first for whatever reason, and then it'll populate the rest of the list with the last servers you've been on. Friends will show servers that your Steam friends are connected to, and apparently I don't have any Steam friends that are currently playing DayZ, so it won't show any. LAN, I guess if you're starting a LAN party. And remote, you can manually put in an IP and a port in here, and then click OK, and it'll connect to that server. So that's, for example, if you don't know the name, or if you can't find the name in your list, or if it's getting filtered out for some reason and somebody just gives you an IP and a port, you can add it in there. Filter, you can filter out by host name. Mission, I don't think applies to anything. Max ping, minimum players, maximum players. I want to show full servers because I often want to connect to servers that have a high population or that are almost full. Passworded hide, I don't think you can password servers right now, but there's no reason for me to want to join them anyway. And BattlEye required, I always pick yes, because without BattlEye required, why would somebody have a server without BattlEye? Good question, huh? So we're going to go back here, and this shows your filters down here. This is not passworded, and this is BattlEye. I'm not sure what this one means here. And then this is less than 120 ping. So if you have any filters, this will show them. So if we go back here, we'll go back to the DayZ main menu, and it'll reload a different background. Fortunately, this one's a little brighter so you can see my character better. Okay, so we've gone over play, character, change server. So now we're going to go to configuration, and this is where it gets good. So first things first, this is perspective. And what this does is it gives you the perspective that you log in on. So usually you will log in, and if you have third-person perspective, it'll automatically put you in third-person perspective. If you have first-person perspective, it'll automatically put you in first-person perspective. Now, this doesn't apply to hardcore servers. Hardcore servers, you are locked in first-person, so it'll always just default to first-person. But otherwise, if you play on regular servers or experimental servers, you can choose whether you want to log in and automatically be in third or first person. I prefer third person just so I can see my surroundings, because often, I want to know where I am. Sometimes I don't remember where exactly I logged in. Invert mouse, I have on, and that's completely a matter of preference. You do not have to put it on. It doesn't help or hurt you any to have it on or off. It's completely a matter of preference. I've been playing first-person shooters for well over 15 years now, and I've always had invert mouse on, so that's just where I've left it. That is what I'm personally comfortable with. Effects, we have set to very low, like pretty low. That's because I find the effects in-game to be a little loud, especially considering I'm in TeamSpeak a lot of times with other players and I'm trying to hear what they're saying, so it's just way too loud. Master volume I have turned down right now just for this video basically, but usually I would have that maxed out. Voice over IP I have maxed out because I want to be able to hear other players talking in game, and a lot of times they come through quietly, so I like to max that out. Music I disable completely. I'm not even sure if DayZ Standalone has music yet. But if it does, I don't want to hear it because I want to be able to hear the sound effects of the game, such as gunshots, footsteps, zombies, and that's what this effects here is going to increase or decrease. Master volume is the overall volume of the game, including ambient noise. Music is music, voice over IP is voice over IP. If you don't want to hear voice over IP, you cannot disable it completely. You can turn it all the way down here, and you will still hear people talking in direct chat. It will be quieter, however, but it will disable side chat, which has not really been implemented in DayZ Standalone yet. So I'm going to turn that all the way back up. Now you'll notice I have my FOV set all the way up right now. I would not recommend that. I see a lot of people on YouTube videos and such that have their FOV for what it seems like maxed out, and I'll explain the different types of FOV in the different situations that you want to use them in. So there's about 3 settings that I will use. I will use completely down for when I am sniping. And the reason for this is that currently in DayZ, the scopes in the game do not lock their FOV. They should have a locked FOV that stays the same. So your FOV in-game when you're running around will be different. And then when you zoom in on a scope, it should always go to the same distance, to the same FOV. And currently in-game it doesn't. FOV actually affects how far you can see through your scope. And unfortunately, both the long-range scope and the ACOG, and I believe the PU scope as well, are not magnified to the proper magnification. So in order to correct that, and to make it so they are actually seeing as far as they should be seeing, you have to turn your FOV all the way down. It just makes sniping much easier, and I will show you, maybe later I'll show you that, or if you watch some of my actual action videos, you'll see me doing that from time to time. Now, by default, on a regular server in third person, I will usually set my FOV somewhere around here, which if I close this and I go back into configure, it's about halfway through the word field, and that FOV is approximately 80 or 90. I find that that's a good FOV for third-person perspective. It allows me to zoom in and see details across a field pretty well, but it's not so far zoomed in that I can't see what's in my immediate vicinity. So it's good for medium range and seeing relatively long range. So it's great for running across the map or scoping out a town from a distance. Now, if I'm on a hardcore server, however, I will take this this bar down to the end of the D, so right about here, and that's about 110, 120 FOV, which is the angle at which your vision is there. So with the angle that you can see is 120 degrees in front of you. That is similar to what your eyes can actually see in first person, and I find it helps alleviate some of the motion sickness that I get when I'm running inside of buildings and stuff in first person only. So I think that this is about as high as you should ever have your FOV. Any higher than that, I would only use in extremely close quarters if I'm running around inside of a building trying to punch somebody out or something in first person, because it will give you greater situational awareness in that situation. But running across fields or running down streets or running out in the open or trying to get a bead on someone from across, a field that's 200 meters or so, it's just really bad. You're not going to be able to see your target, because you're essentially trying to pack more area, a higher field of view into the same resolution of a screen, and basically it's just going to distort everything. It's going to make things look very spread out. It's going to give you that fishbowl effect, which is not very good. Like I said, it's good for the very close quarters situations, but for long to medium long range, you don't want your FOV that high. So I'm going to move it back to about where I like it, which is about here. So that's again, some people might say that it's a matter of preference, and I'd say yes, absolutely, go with what you're comfortable with, but keep in mind that when you have your FOV way too high, like off the charts, you're just going to get the fishbowl effect, and you're not going to be able to spot details at a distance, which I think in DayZ most combat situations happen at, they begin at a distance, unless, like I said, you're running around like downtown Electro inside of a building or something. So from there, let's go to the easy stuff first. Audio. This should be just set to default. I have it sound sources 32, auto adjust. I don't click this. I think this auto adjusts to your microphone, like you speak into it. Let me see here. Yeah, I just want to cancel that. I don't want to do that. I pretty much have that all configured out of the game, and I've tested it in game and it sounds fine. Input volume, this is the sound of your microphone in game. I turn that all the way up so that people can make me out. I highly recommend doing that, unless your microphone is extremely loud and you can test it with friends or something. But I would suggest having this at first turned all the way up, unless somebody tells you in game that you're extremely loud. This way you can actually have a conversation with people when you have a player interaction, and they can understand you and hear what you're saying, which is very important. If you tell somebody, excuse me, drop your weapon, you don't want them to be going, what are you saying? So having that audio set, that input volume set all the way up is a good thing. The next thing, gameplay. I have head bob turned all the way down. Personally, I've never liked head bob in first-person shooters. It just doesn't do it for me. I'm not sure. I just don't like it. So let's get into more of the interesting stuff here. We got video, and first thing, I have my brightness and gamma set to the middle. Now, obviously, if you're playing on a nighttime server, a lot of people say it's cheesy to turn your brightness and gamma up. A lot of people think it's a cheat, and while I, in some respects I agree with that, I don't think that we should be able to completely control our gamma and brightness. However, you have to consider this. even if they lock it in game, people are going to still be able to adjust their gamma and brightness from outside of the game, either through third-party programs or even their monitor settings. Most monitors have settings which allow you to adjust your colors and your brightness and your gamma. So no matter what, DayZ's not really going to be able to control people's brightness and gamma. So I say, you know, let people keep it where they want it. Obviously, you don't want it too dark because you want to be able to see things. And I think if it looks too bright, it just looks way too washed out. So normally I keep it right about in the middle. Now, if you're on a nighttime server, if you are going for immersion and role-playing, I would say absolutely, you know, avoid turning your brightness and gamma up. However, you got to keep in mind that other people are going to be turning their brightness and gamma up, and you do not want to put yourself at a disadvantage in those situations unless you're willing to accept that. I mean, if you're personally willing to accept that, that's fine. But for me, I'd rather not lose a character on a nighttime server because somebody else is using high brightness and gamma, and therefore I die because I don't see them before they see me. Now, your rendering resolution should be set to whatever your desktop resolution is. Overall quality, that's going to be custom. I'm not sure if it defaults to that when you start changing stuff, but I would say set it to very high and then modify, and it'll change to custom, I believe. VSync is enabled or disabled. I would disable that. Here's another thing that a lot of people either don't understand or they have different feelings on it. VSync basically locks the refresh rate in game to the refresh rate of your monitor. Now, if you have 120 hertz monitor, then it'll lock it to that. If you have a 60 hertz monitor, it'll lock it to that. It'll lock it to 60 frames per second. The important thing to note here, and the reason why I have it disabled, is that if you drop below 60 frames a second, then your FPS will cut in half. So it'll drop down to 30 frames a second. And if it drops below 30 frames a second, then your FPS will again drop in half because it is syncing the frames to your hertz, the hertz of your monitor, the refresh rate of your monitor. So essentially, you're going to be losing more FPS if you are below 60. Now, if you have a system which is capable of running DayZ always at above 60, then setting your VSync to enabled will essentially lock your FPS at 60, which is fine. It'll remove screen tearing, which you'll see in-game a lot of times. You'll see your screen kind of lines, you know, horizontal lines moving up and down your screen. That's called screen tearing, and enabling VSync will remove that screen tearing. I am so used to playing first-person shooters and getting screen tearing that it doesn't really bother me, so I have VSync disabled. And like I said, you're gonna overall, I think you're gonna get less frames a second if you enabled VSync, unless you have a really good computer. So if you don't have a top-of-the-line PC that can run DayZ at a constant 60 frames a second, I would definitely recommend disabling VSync. User interface, this is the size of your user interface. We can go very small, and as you see, it shrinks it down. It's still got that letterbox effect on the tops and bottom, which I don't quite understand. I think that's kind of a bug. It's something that they've got on. But very large, looks a little too big to me, although it does fit the screen better up with the letterbox effect down here. And then large, I think, fits just about perfect. I don't like it too big. Aspect ratio, I'm sticking with wide, 16:9, which is, you know, my resolution. So you can leave that there. Quality. So here's another thing that a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people, especially if they get low FPS in game, they will turn everything down to off or very low. While I would definitely recommend that with some things, object detail, I believe it's very important that you keep this high to very high. The reason for that is that, you know what? Let's go in game, and I'm actually going to show you the reason for that. Here I am in DayZ, and as you can see, I have my Mosin here, long range scope. And right now I have my video settings, my quality set to high. And as you can see, if I zoom in, I can see right through those windows. And you can see if I'm backed out here, they're like blacked out, not very detailed. But if I zoom in, I can see right through them. Okay? Now we're going to set my my object detail to low or very low. Quality, very low. Close out. And now you can see that those are still blacked out. Still blacked out through the scope. And I can only see detail through them if I zoom completely in. You'll even notice that these here, these windows right here, even if I double zoom, you know, if I zoom from standing, I cannot see into these windows unless I zoom in with my scope. Now let's go back, video, quality, very high, and instantly you see the difference. And you can actually see inside those windows. You can see in that. That'll affect doors as well. You'll see this a lot with the ATCs, the air traffic control towers. You won't be able to see the insides of them from a distance without your object detail very high. So that's about that. Also, we'll do a little testing with FOV here as well. FOV, I like it set where if I'm standing behind my character like this, you should see the bottom of their backpack, maybe their butt if they're running. And then if we go to our field of view, this is long range, and you'll be able to tell the difference. See how big that is right there. And then we go field of view, close, close. Now look, it absolutely affects, you know, how far you can see with your scope out. Now I can see around me really well. See almost, you know, 360 degrees, and this is great for close quarter combat. But for long range, you know, I cannot make out details very well. You know, if there was a person running along that hill out there where I have my crosshair, I would not be able to make them out with this FOV. But if I set my field of view, you know, down in this area, much more likely that I'm going to be able to pick out a target up there. You know, same thing with sniping from even, you know, 200-300 meters. If I come over here, get to a point where I can see that building over there. Alright, this should do it. Alright, here we go. Alright. I can, you know, if I zoom in like this, I could see somebody moving up there pretty well. I could see somebody moving inside of there pretty well. However, if I set my field of view very high, I can hardly make out that building. You know, it's almost, it would be impossible for me to see anything up there. So here we are back in the quality menu, and like I said, I like to have this set to very high for the reason I just explained. Terrain, I have set very high, but it's not really necessary. You could set it to lower, but I do like to see grass, like more grass and more grass at a distance. It doesn't really affect how other players appear, because at a distance the game actually simulates that there is grass. So if a target is laying prone on a hill across from you and you zoom in with a, you know, long range scope, you're going to see that character sunk into the ground as though there was grass around them without the game actually rendering in the grass. So it doesn't matter if you set your terrain very low, and it's actually in game, it's not going to remove all that grass. It's actually, you know, just going to make grass look a little nicer. It's going to make it more detailed, which I like. Now, if you're trying to save on FPS, this might gain you a couple frames if you turn it all the way very low. But overall, I have a decent PC, so I run my terrain at very high. Again, this is a matter of preference. Clouds, I have very low. I like to have clouds. I like to see them. You can tell which direction you're going by the direction that the clouds are moving. I believe that clouds move east in DayZ and in the Arma 2 engine and the Arma 3 engine. So if you set clouds to very low, you can still see them, and you know, you don't need the super high detail. That, you know, that'll affect your FPS a little bit, but I like to be able to have them in the game. Same with shadows. If somebody's moving up silently behind you, I mean, this is a very rare circumstance that can happen, but it can happen. It can happen. Same thing with zombies. You may not hear a zombie coming, but you may see their shadow coming. So I like to have that awareness. If you completely disable shadows, you won't have that awareness. It also just makes the game look better. So I do like to set these to very low. You can set them to disabled if you're running on an older rig. but I would definitely recommend, if you can spare a couple FPS, definitely put these at least on very low. So we're going to go back out here. We've already covered user interface. For textures, most modern day PCs are capable of running high detail textures. You're not going to get a whole lot of FPS by shutting these, I mean, it's just going to make the game look like crap. It's going to make the character look like crap. I would rather just set these to high and have the game look better. That said, again, if you're running on a very low-end PC, you may want to turn all your texture detail and your texture filtering down, but I honestly believe that if you compare it back to back, you're not going to gain a whole lot of FPS out of setting it to very low, and it really just makes the game kind of icky looking. Video memory, I would set to auto. That'll automatically determine how much memory is dedicated to your video and your textures. So that's what I use. Seems to work fine for me. Some people, I mean, like, I can't really think of a good reason to set it lower than that. If you know a good reason, feel free to share it with me in the comments. Finally, rendering. This is where I get all my FPS. I have anti-aliasing disabled, alpha 2 coverage disabled. Anti-aliasing is going to make edges sharper. It makes corners and edges look a little less pixelated, so it does make the game a little nicer. Alpha 2 coverage, it's going to make trees and bushes and those kinds of things look nicer, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's what that does. Edge smoothing is that's a form of anti-aliasing. You can go in here and turn it very high. That's again going to make your edges sharper. It's going to make things look a little better, but overall, not very important for me anyway. I can make out things just fine. You can save on some FPS by removing or disabling these things. HDR quality I set to low. It's a lighting option. I don't think it takes a lot of FPS, and the game will look just fine. Doesn't matter either way. I think actually improves the lighting at night. So if you're running around at night, especially with your gamma and your brightness turned up, the HDR quality will actually make the game look a lot better at night. Ambient occlusion, again, I believe this is the textures of trees and bushes, and I have that disabled. Post-processing quality. Now, a lot of people don't like post-processing quality because what it does is it makes your screen very blurry. It gives you a motion blur when you're running. If you turn it to very low, that motion blur is isolated to the very edges of your screen. If you turn it to very high, there's a lot more of it. So I definitely keep it on very low. However, the blur on your screen is indicative of your health level. You have two health levels in DayZ. You have your blood level, which is how much blood you have in your body. If you drop below 200, you go unconscious. And then you have your health level, which is 0 to 5,000, and if you drop to 0 health, you die. Now, I have bloom, or I have post-processing quality to very low because I want to have that indication of my health without it being overbearing and causing a lot of visual problems. I don't like blur. I don't like the motion blur. So I do turn it to very low. But I like to have it there because it does show me if my health is low. So if you want to disable it completely, you can, and I'm not sure if you'll save any FPS on it, but if you just don't like the very edges of your screen being blurred, you can disable it, but keep in mind that you will have no visual indication of your health level other than your healthy status in-game. Bloom and rotation blur, I keep those all the way disabled. As I've already explained, I don't like rotation blur, and I don't particularly like bloom, so I disable those completely. So we've covered all this stuff, and let's go to close. We've already touched on audio, we've already touched on the gameplay, not much there really. Now let's go on to controls, and this is where it gets a little sketchy. So, a couple things. First of all, about mouse sensitivity and mouse acceleration. First of all, I can't click off here. I can click acceleration. I can click click this button all day and it won't change anything. It's stuck on. I'm not sure if it's actually on in game. Recently there was a patch that said that they disabled mouse acceleration, and they also gave it a 1-to-1 mouse ratio, which means that it's direct input from your mouse to the game. There's no filtering between that. I'm not sure how accurate that is. I'm not sure how much they've actually changed, but apparently it's no longer there. Now, aiming dead zone, I would never use that. It's kind of a weird way to play, and I don't think anybody really does use it, so I have it disabled completely. Mouse smoothing, that's basically a form of mouse acceleration, and I have that completely disabled. X-axis, Y-axis mouse sensitivity. This is something that is a matter of preference, but I would highly recommend that you turn your mouse sensitivity as down as far as is comfortable for you. And there's a reason for this. And there's a rule of thumb as well. The rule of thumb is basically you should be able to turn 90 degrees in one quick movement. That is to say that you should comfortably be able to move your mouse to the right or left and turn 90 degrees. DayZ's a little weird because of the way that it handles, the weapon handles, it actually slows down your turning and stuff. But basically, if you're able to turn 90 degrees left or right in one movement of your mouse, that's good. In two quick movements, you should be able to turn 180 degrees around. Now, the reason, a lot of people and some people out there, they use very high mouse sensitivity, and I'll tell you why I don't like this. Is mouse sensitivity, high mouse sensitivity was all the rage back in the days of Quake and Unreal Tournament, where you needed to absolutely spin your character around non-stop throughout the game. There were targets all around you all the time, everything was flying, so you had to have very quick reflexes, and you had to move your mouse a long distance back and forth very quickly. So that's why people used a high mouse sensitivity. For DayZ and other tactical shooters like Arma, even Counter-Strike, which a lot of people don't consider a tactical shooter anymore, they consider it more arcadey. But even for Counter-Strike, Counter-Strike is a tactical shooter in the sense that it's not the same type of shooter as Quake or Doom or Unreal Tournament, where there's that really fast twitch reflex. The shooting in DayZ, Counter-Strike, and a lot of the modern day shooters, a lot of the tactical shooters, is more based on putting your crosshair on a spot, waiting for somebody to step into it, and then firing. So that's how you're going to get most of your kills. You're not going to be, I mean, it's also tracking a target as they're running across a field or spinning quickly to look at a target and fire a couple shots. So you want to be able to control your crosshair by moving your mouse slowly. And there's not many circumstances in DayZ or other tactical shooters where you have to spin your mouse around very quickly. Most situations, you're going to know where your target is, or you're going to be shot and you're going to be dead. And when you know where your target is, you're going to want to maintain your aim on that target for as long as possible while you let off your shots. Also, games like Quake and those others I listed didn't have any recoil on their weapons. The crosshair didn't actually move when you fired the weapons. So there was no compensating for recoil. Now, in Counter-Strike, for example, or DayZ, your crosshair actually moves up and in whatever direction when you fire the weapon. So what you have to do when that happens, when you're firing an M4 and your crosshair is moving up because of the recoil, you have to compensate for that by moving your crosshair down. If you have a high mouse sensitivity, you're going to overcompensate for the recoil because your sensitivity is too high. If you have a lower sensitivity, it's much easier to control that recoil with very small mouse movements, just by slowly gliding your mouse forward or backwards or whatever, however you have your axis set. You're gonna adjust for that recoil. So that's why I use low mouse sensitivity, and that also plays into the mouse acceleration thing. In the old days with the very fast twitch shooters, you needed acceleration. You didn't really need it, but it was nice to have because you could adjust how quickly your mouse moved or rather your crosshair moved by how quickly you moved your mouse, as opposed to just directly how much you moved your mouse. Whereas in tactical shooters, again, you want consistency. You want to be able to consistently control your mouse or your crosshair, and you want to do it with as little movement as possible. That helps prevent fatigue on your wrist and your hand, and yeah, it's just overall, my opinion as a longtime gamer and first-person shooter player, I prefer a slower sensitivity. Also, since they have changed the mouse sensitivity to direct input, they have made it so that the y-axis and the x-axis, there's no compensation for the x or the y-axis, and the y-axis is your up-down axis. So what you're going to want to do, in my opinion, is turn your y-axis down to about half or even 1/4 of what your x-axis sensitivity is set to. Otherwise, your crosshair moves up and down more than it should. 90% of the time, you're going to be aiming for the head or the upper body. So you're not going to need to move your crosshair up and down a lot. You want it more, aiming towards the horizon. So that's why I have the y-axis set to much lower than the x-axis. Under devices, I guess you can set up game pads and stuff. I personally don't use them, and I prefer not to use them for first-person shooters. So we're going to ignore that. Now, under assignments, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click presets, and I'm going to go to DayZ, and this is going to give me all the default settings for DayZ. And then I'm going to go through, and one by one, I'm just going to explain to you what I'm doing here. First of all, I'm going to go in and I'm going to delete any redundant commands. I only want my keys bound to one thing. That way I don't accidentally ever press the wrong thing. Fast forward is 2W, 2 times W, so that's running. Walk or run temporarily. I want to do that. I don't want the walk or run toggle, so I want to delete that. Now what that does, the walk or run toggle, I've seen this happen sometimes. It's happened to friends of mine. It even happened to me. You accidentally press left shift 2 times, and now you're stuck walking. Now, this ain't so bad if you're just goofing around with friends, but if you're in a tense situation, you don't want to accidentally press left shift 2 times and then be stuck walking when you need to run away or run behind cover or something like that. So I would just remove that. Stand up, I use spacebar. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to put spacebar. Now you'll see that this pops up in red. That shows me that there is another command that is also set to spacebar. We'll go crouch. I use control in all first-person shooters. You don't have to. You can go with whatever you're comfortable with. Step over. I'm going to use C. No reason for that other than that I use V for voice. So I use it for TeamSpeak to activate. So I can't bind anything to V, so I use C for step over. Again, this stuff is mostly just a matter of your preference. But there is some logic to some of this. Lean left and right, I'm fine with that. Q and E, I like those. However, I want to remove the track IR, not because I have one, just because I think it's neater to not have it in there. Lean left toggle and lean right toggle. Again, I'm going to remove these completely because of the same reason as the shift key. I do not want these keys to get stuck and then have me in a position where I'm going to be, unable to move or unable to get out of the way, or, I don't want that. So I just completely remove those. Delete and end, we can remove those. Those are turn right and turn left. That's what we have a mouse for. So that's infantry movement out of the way. Now, so let's move on to infantry weapons. Fire, primary mouse button. Hold breath. Hold second mouse button. Now, here's a problem. If I'm holding my second mouse button, I'm zooming in, or I'm looking across the field. Let's give a situation here. I'm sitting, or I'm laying prone, I'm watching a town, and I'm sniping targets. If a target is moving around on a building or around town, and I'm tracking them with my crosshair, and I'm double zoomed in, at the same time as I'm doing that, I'm also holding my breath. So what that's going to do is my character is going to hold breath, And then after a while, he can't hold his breath anymore, and he exhales. When he exhales, he's now out of breath as though he just ran. So the crosshair is going to shake, so I lose accuracy on my shot. I've seen this happen a lot of times in very popular YouTubers' videos. They will be sitting there sniping, and they'll wonder why they can't hit a target. And it's because they're out of breath. So instead of this, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to assign that key to Alt, which right now is set to look. You don't have to bind it to Alt. You can bind it to whatever you want to bind it to, but I prefer left Alt. Now optics. This is second mouse button, also 0. I don't really need that. I can delete that. Optics mode. So in DayZ mod, you had different modes of optics. For example, if you had a backup iron sight as well as, say, an ACOG sight, you could switch back and forth between those. So I'm going to leave that where it is because I'm used to that. Zeroing up and down, page up and page down, that's fine with me. Also, you can use your, if you have a mouse with, I think it's 6 or 7 buttons, like buttons on the right side of the mouse, I have those bound to page up and page down, so I can change my zeroing up and down just in game, or rather just by using my mouse. So 0 down, 0 up. Throw item is G. I'm fine with that. That's, you know, grenade, G. That makes sense to me. Headlights on and off, L. That's good. Reload, R. Very used to that. Toggle weapons. Okay. I'm going to change this to F. That's just my preference. I like to toggle my weapons with F. What toggle weapons does is it actually change your fire mode. So if you want to switch back and forth between burst and single shot, or rather full auto and single shot, you can do that by pressing your buttons. It's not a very intuitive name, but that's what it does. And there is no user interface right now in DayZ Standalone that tells you you're in single shot, or rather single fire, or burst or auto mode, but you can test it yourself and see that that does indeed work. Raise weapon, instead of right control plus space, I'm going to delete that. I don't need that. To raise weapon, I'm going to delete that. I already have that set to stand up. And I'm going to change that to T. So see, I changed weapon, toggle weapon from F to T, or from T to F, and then toggle raise weapon, I changed that to T. So I go back to infantry movement. Everything's still good in here. View. Most of this stuff should be pretty good. Okay, so left alt is look. I want to delete that. And free look is 2 times left alt. I'm going to delete that. Okay, so look, the difference between free look and look is that free look is toggled, and look is just moving it really quick. So for example, if I hold my look button and I turn my mouse to left or right, I'm going to look left or right without changing the direction that I'm moving. However, with free look, you would press the button, move, and it would look around, and then you have to press it again to snap back to center, whereas look, you just immediately snap back to center as soon as you let go. So I'm going to bind that to is my mouse 4 button, which is my thumb button on my mouse. So basically, if I'm moving around, I move my crosshair, and then I press my thumb button and move my mouse to the left or right, I'm going to look to the left or right, and then I let it go, and my crosshair snaps back to center. The rest of this stuff, free head move, not really necessary. I could probably delete a bunch of this stuff, but I'm not going to go through that trouble right now. Inventory, gear is tab. Night vision we don't even have in game yet, but that's fine where it is. We could bind that to M map, although I'm not even sure if that works yet. GPS in DayZ mod, it was right control M. And these are your items. This is your hotbar. That's fine. Interact. So I just want to delete that. And that's fine. Use selected action. Free look interaction. Here's all of your taunts and stuff. All your emotes. And we don't have vehicles. We don't have helicopters. We don't have vehicle weapons. Multiplayer. I don't even know if there's a multiplayer statistic right now, so that's probably an unused key. List of players, P, that's fine for me. You can change it if you like. Now here's one. Push to talk, caps lock. Voice over net. That's not very intuitive the way it's named. But what voice over net does is that toggles your voice to, or your push to talk. In other words, if you double tap caps lock, you'll be stuck in direct chat. I don't like when that happens, so I delete that. And I just make it so I hold down my caps lock key to talk. Previous channel, next channel, that's fine. And then that'll switch between these when those actually exist in the game. Commanding, don't really need anything there. One more thing I wanted to add at the end here. I actually forgot to address one more key binding. Under view, if you go to toggle view, obviously your two enter keys switch back and forth between third person and first person mode. I like to add mouse button 5, which is my second thumb button, to that, so that I can quickly switch back and forth between third person and first person without taking my hand off the keyboard. This helps, especially in combat situations where you're moving around in third person and you want to see people around you. But you're going to lose accuracy if you engage the target in third person. So rather than taking my hand off the mouse to do that, the button's right there on my thumb. I just quickly tap that. I go to first person, and I got my target right there. And I don't lose the accuracy that I would if I was in third. So that's that. And that concludes this video. That concludes the DayZ Survival Guide Chapter 1. I appreciate you guys watching. I know it's a long one. I think the future ones are going to be a little bit shorter. If you enjoyed this video, or if you learned something from it, like, comment, and subscribe. Again, I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you next time in Chapter 2. Thank you.